Hello Internet, and welcome to Tabitha's Tiny Realms, the show where I take a boring, unpainted mini, and through the power of movie magic, turn it into something completely different. In today's episode, we're going to be painting a very angry goat, a dangerous and aggressive war beast that bulldozes its opponents into submission using its horns, fists, and sometimes other enemies. It's known as the Rip Horn Satyr, a heavy war beast of the Circle of Orboros army. Now that you've seen me fumble around with my stand and paint myself to show everyone that I am indeed a true mini painter, we can start by applying the first step of my favorite painting method, slapchop. To do so, we're going to generously apply some of this ash gray paint everywhere on this colorless goat's body. Now, this part of the technique is made to be very quick and very dirty, which is why I love it so much. You see, I'm extremely lazy, and having to do a single coat of paint on something that already has shading fills me with uncontrollable glee. For this next step, we'll be applying some Army Painter matte white paint very lightly on the edges of the mini. We want to make sure we brush it with just the tip in order to create some contrast. This is actually one of my favorite steps because everything starts to look great and I didn't have to put any effort in it. I think there's an argument to be made to just leave your minis like this and create like a noir style army. But unfortunately for you, my dear audience, I love color and we will be getting to mess up this perfectly contrasted creature into a colored monstrosity. That being said, it's time to put away the fun brush and take out this 00 precise detail brush and start working. The first color we're going to apply is some warrior skin on our goated warrior because his chiseled abs deserve to be shared and observed by everyone. Next up is the only iron-looking metallic paint I own, Broadsword Silver. Now, one thing I dislike about Army Painter speed paints is I think the metallic paints aren't the greatest. I think I prefer their thicker paints for these kinds of work, if that makes sense. But honestly, in this case, I wasn't too disappointed with the results. From your perspective, of course, it kind of looks like I'm just painting gray on gray on gray, but hopefully you get to see the detail work once I show off the mini on my spinny doohickey. Now, I don't know what got into me at this point or why I chose Ancient Honey as my color for all the fabrics of the mini. I'm not the biggest fan of yellow in particular, and in hindsight, I think a light shade of green might have been a better choice, but I feel like maybe I hadn't had breakfast that morning and decided I needed more honey in my life or something. As I'm slobbering this poor goat in yellow goo, I'd like to take the time to ask it for forgiveness for not showing him more table presence in my wargaming days. I was more of a fan of the warp wolf variety, but the more I paint this little guy, and the more I appreciate the simplicity of the model, as well as its general aesthetic. As our next step, we'll be moving into some more detailed work and applying some shamrock green on the insides of his armor plating. I like to imagine that the Circle of Orboros has some kind of magic alloy that shines green and they equip it to their soldiers. In general, I also think that this is the standard color that a lot of players put on their models and it makes it a little bit more recognizable. I realize I haven't spoken about my equipment that much yet, but the colored paints that I'm using are Army Speed Paints 2.0, which are basically a kind of contrast paint. They're amazing resources out there that can definitely give you more insight than I ever could on the differences of how any of these paints work, and I'll make sure to share some of those details down in the doobly-doo. But basically, from a layman's perspective, these are paints that are a little bit more like washes. They're runny and kind of transparent, which is what makes the slapchop method work so well. You can probably already notice on the model that we can see the contrast that we created earlier using our gray and white paints. We're now going to apply the bony matter to the, you guessed it, bony parts of our model. Now, this is where I find that speed paints kind of struggle. Lighter colors like this really don't show off that well, especially skin tones. I realized that I may just have to make those parts of the model a little bit lighter using the dry brushing technique earlier to really make the paint shine, but I really wish that it would show off just a little bit more on these darker surfaces. Moving on, we're gonna move to the little bits of fur our goat friend has, and I decided he'll be a ginger using bright red, which ends up looking a little bit orange. This next step is the nerve-wracking detail work of the armor trim, which I decided to do in Hoplite Gold. I honestly have no idea how many times I messed up in this step, and ended up chopping a lot of my footage to not waste your time. But as you can probably imagine, detail work is not my forte. But as a wise old man once said, there are no mistakes, just happy little accidents, which I make a lot of. Now, if watching me make mistakes in a non-edited fashion is something you would enjoy watching, or if you would enjoy watching my whole uninterrupted process, you can watch my Watch Me Paint series, where I'll just let the music roll, eliminate the voiceovers and the edits. There'll be some nice details in there, such as overly excited hand gestures, moments of panic as I spill gold paint into my armor plates, or moments of anger where I throw away my base after seeing my mini fall off of it for the 5th time in a row. But if there's one thing I think you can truly get from seeing the whole experience, is realizing that mini painting with the right tools isn't that hard, that a normal girl who makes mistakes, just like myself, is able to have fun making content for the judgmental masses of the internet, and that maybe you too can enjoy putting color to resin on your very limited spare time. Because I love mini painting, and that's why I do it. Not because I'm good at it, but because it's fun and relaxing and makes you look like a total nerd when girls come over into your house and see your walls lined up with colorful children's toys. As I'm finishing on these endless trims of armor plating, this sounds like a perfect time to do the one thing that all YouTube creators do and invite you to like, share, and interact with my content. I've got a very tiny channel, just starting out actually, and moving it along will help me out to share my love of miniature painting out there and hopefully make others join into the hobby. We are now moving on to some of the finishing touches, and we are going to add some of the blood of our enemies to our goat's weapons. I try to splash it around and make it look like blood appeared as he was slashing his weapons, and I like to do that on practically all of my miniatures. I'm also going to add some to the horns, as I imagine he would have gored some people to death. Next step is a little bit of rust on the metal parts of his armor. Fighting dragons is sweaty work, and I don't think our goat takes it off that often, so it's bound to get rusty. He also has a lot of scratches on his blades, which I imagine would get dull and rusted over time. Finally, I'm going to be using this large 2 brush in order to apply a very heavy dark wash to my mini. Now, this isn't at all required when doing slapchop, as the black primer we had on our mini is enough to fill any of the dark spots, but I like my battle-hardened warriors to look dirty from all the fighting, and I find that this kind of wash gets the job done. Now, you'll notice that the mini will start to look significantly darker using this wash, but typically, once it dries, the color tends to pop out as it really just fills in all the cracks. And that's really all there is to it. Now you can see the fully painted monstrosity in all of his goated glory. Thank you for making it this far, and I hope you enjoyed watching me fumble along in this journey. I also invite you to stick around for some new content coming soon. Enjoy your day!